All right. Good afternoon, gunslingers, and welcome to Studio 67. The People's Vice, Colonel Velasco, with you here today. On behalf of our Commander, Colonel Phillips, and our Senior Enlisted Leader, Chief McKendry, we're really excited about you joining us today. And so today is about our wings, Gunslinger Country. Identified as proud airmen with Native American heritage, you begin to think about, hey, I wonder what their story is like, right? And the commonality of theme is the culture that they all share, and this, respective of their individual tribes and their tribal associations. And so, with that, how do you make this truly about being powered by people, right? And so that's how we started. And so that conversation turned into action, and that's what we have here today. So first off, before we get started and do a formal introduction, want to thank our Chief of Safety, Ms. Lynn Madison, and our Chief of Public Affairs, Mr. Trevor Tiernan, for getting this together on such a short notice. And so, Lynn, our first speak today, right? So how do you get to appreciate someone's heritage and someone's culture, right? And it's about taking the time to take it in and to learn and to expose yourself to that. So with that, spirit in mind, if you will, we are very privileged and honored to have with us today Mr. Erwin DeLuna. What's your official title, sir?
I'm President of the United States Powwow.
That's what I'm talking about. I was going to say President, CEO, Chairman, Emeritus, leader of all things, but I didn't want to fill up the business card. So, President of the San Antonio Powwow, and so he's here with us today. So, Mr. DeLuna, thank you so very much for taking the time to be with us today, and hopefully we'll walk away today with some insights that will make us wiser. And so, you ask yourself why, right? The question is, Sergeant Neal and I were having this conversation before we came in here. So why do we take the time to do this, right? And so I said it once, I'll say it again. So in our profession, in the defense of our nation, we have to be and keep the ultimate team, right? And the strength of a team is predicated on the interpersonal bonds you achieve with your teammates. And the notion behind what I'm saying is simple, that when you get to understand who your teammate is as a human, and that is largely driven by their heritage and their experience and where they come from and what they think and what they believe and what they value, that's what makes that interpersonal connection strong over time. And that's the kind of teams that we need to foster. So Mr. DeLuna, without any further ado, I'll turn it over to you, and thank you again for joining us today.
Thank you. I appreciate the introduction. And so I know that there's a diverse group here. I hope that I'm not going to get you all to go, sleep. As an individual, we all do different things, and we all greet each other differently. And so just in a couple of words, I want to say hello. In Navajo, it's Yate. In Osage, it's Hoey. In Choctaw, Halito. In Cherokee, Oco. In Creek, Tansi. And Hopi, Hayu. If I didn't tell you that was going to be a greeting before, you may not have known it, okay? And I'm sure in this room, whether or not you answered the questionnaire, and I don't know how it was put, are you Native American or American Indian? I'm sure there are some in this room or even in the audience that are listening to this today, and I appreciate all of you. We're all different. We all need to know about our heritages and who we are. Again, my name is Erwin DeLuna, and my heritage is Dene, which is also known as Navajo, and the Taos Pueblo. Every one of the Indian nations today has a word for their particular tribal groups, and most of them mean the people, okay? So that's a kind of a loose translation of who we are as individuals. My mother that's on my mother's side, and my dad was from Mexico. Family was from Mexico, but he was actually born in the United States. I participated in American Indian dance for most of my life. The earliest age I can remember was when I was 12 years old. Could have done it earlier, but I'm not quite sure. You know, at 12, you don't remember things that happened before that sometimes, unless you had a good bike or something. I don't know what it was. I have 2 daughters, and I have 5 grandchildren. Uh, they all participate in the culture. I had a story that I used to tell people when we were talking about my grandchildren. My oldest grandson started when he was 18 months old, and that's when he started to actually, we dressed him out. In fact, part of his clothes are part of the displays when he got a little older, but we dressed him out when he was 18 months, and his 2 sisters are a year to 2 years difference, and they say, what are we? Why don't you always tell when you started? And I says, well, I can remember him, but I can't remember. I know you, but I don't remember your age. So, but we've done all activities. They've done that, participated in different avenues and forms. I wrote everything down today, and I'm going to apologize ahead of time. I have to look at this because otherwise you'll be hit to 3 hours, and you don't want to do that. I have also other members that participate. One of the unique things is I came from a large family, and I have an identical twin brother. And I always say I'm the better looking one. So your kids do the same thing, right? Okay. And he actually has done presentation this month, and he lives in Arizona. And so quite often we get confused. His name is Edwin. So his name is Edwin and mine Erwin, and we always get confused. So if I show up sometimes and they introduce me as Edwin, I said, my brother thanks you, and I thank you. So we recognize this month the accomplishments of American Indians in the United States today, particularly this month. It wasn't always that way. Over a period of time, it eventually became a one-day celebration. Now we have a full month, and then we also have the last Friday in September, and there's the last Friday in November that they do something as well, and depending on where you're at. Our heritage and our culture has been passed down from person to person. And for the most part, a lot of it wasn't written of what we learned, who we are. When I used to go back to the Taos Pueblo, and my dad was in the military for 28 and a half years, or 28 years, I'm going to call it. And he got a lot of vacation time after a while. So we were able to take the family during summer vacations and go up and see relatives up in Denver, and then come back and we'd stop at the Taos Pueblo. Well, the irony is when you walked up there, it's been a year, you don't remember where somebody lives, but you know you're looking for the family, and they're very close knit. And I'm sure this happens on all Indian reservations or places where people live. And we'd ask for the relative, we're trying to find this relative. And they would say, we don't know who you're talking about. So then my oldest aunt of the family would be with us as well, and she'd rattle off this whole family history of who our great-grandmother was, what they did, and all that type of stuff. They're around the corner. Let me show you where it's at. Okay. This month, the Bureau of Indian Affairs and nationally, this month is known by the Department of the Interior as Grounded in Tradition, Resilient in Spirit. Grounded in tradition, resilient in spirit. And when I talk to the military, I think that's part of you. You as a group, you know, regardless of what service you're in, regardless of what role you play in the military, you're grounded in traditions of all those people that came before you. You've got that spirit to overcome the things that need to be overcome when those things happen. And as the Indian people, we do the same thing. You know, they always, sometimes people are looking at the negative. Indians were treated bad. No doubt about it. Okay? But I will tell you that we, as first Americans here, they made enormous contributions to the life of our country. When the first Europeans landed on this continent, they found a land of diverse people with rich cultural and complex systems of government, languages, religious, values, and traditions that have shaped the American values we have today and their heritage. They were dealt with because had strength. They were dealt with because they had the ability to show them that they had self-governing powers. A lot of treaties were made. We were known by even other people as sovereign nations. Every Indian tribe that they encountered, they eventually did a treaty with and considered them sovereign nations. And we are today still. We have sovereign lands. We have flags for the most part of those that have developed flags. And so over a period of time, even our United States Constitution was based on part of the Iroquois Confederation for our Constitution. Most governments are organized by the consent of the people that are governing them. They have general governing bodies that are referred to generally as councils and comprised of persons that are elected to their positions. And it can be anywhere from a year to a couple, 3, 4 years. The presiding official sometimes is called a chairman, although some presidents have used, some tribes have used principal chief, president, or a governor. They have an elected tribal council for the most part, and they meet to talk and speak about the tribes and negotiate with federal, state, and local governments. The Navajo Nation is the largest governing body among American Indians. It is comprised of 87 tribal councils. That's a lot of councils to be in one group. Elected every 4 years by popular vote of the electorate in 109 local Navajo chapters of the reservation. They also comprise the largest landmass of the Indian nations here. So they are by far the largest Indian population and also the tribal lands that they have. They encompass actually 3 states, part of Colorado, which makes it 4 states. Based on the 2020 United States Census, Texas has the 10th largest population of American Indians. They say, where are they all at? Can't find them. Well, what happened was in the 60s, early 60s, the federal government took people off reservations and they put them into large urban areas. And like in Texas, they put them in Austin, Fort Worth, Dallas, Houston, and San Antonio. There's only 3 Indian reservations in the state of Texas. Some people don't realize that. You've got the Tiguas that are in El Paso. You've got the Kickapoo and Eagle Pass. And you've got the Alabama Coshada, which is actually 2 Indian tribes living on the same reservation outside of Livingston. The term Native American, let's get that, also came into effect during the 1960s to designate tribal groups, not only American Indians in the United States, but also Alaskan natives. And so they grouped them all together. And so it's easier, we don't have to say they're Eskimos, we don't have to say they're Lakota, we can just say they're all Native American. Actually, they're all First People when you think about it. We don't know how long we've been in this country. The last thing I heard was over 10,000 years ago, way before that stupid land bridge was supposed to have been made over the Bering Strait. So we've been here a long time. Currently today, and this changes on a yearly basis, but right now there are 574 federally recognized tribes in the United States. This includes 223 village groups in Alaska. Federally recognized means that these groups have a special legal relationship with the United States government. Early in 1996, the state of Oklahoma dedicated a flag plaza to Native peoples currently living within their boundaries. Now, Oklahoma doesn't seem to be that big, okay? 36 flagpoles bearing 35 flags are being shown of the number of tribes in one state. The 36th flagpole actually belongs to the Kickapoo. They have a tribal flag, but they don't believe in showing it or displaying it in public, although they do it in their tribal offices. So, generations of American Indians have served in the military. We go all the way back to the founding of this country, and by far we have the largest percentage of young men and women serving in our armed forces. This month in November, we're glad that we'll also recognize those veterans, and we recognize you as well. My father retired again with almost 28 years. Most of it was here at Fort Sam Houston, although he did go to Panama. He did go to Vietnam. I have an identical twin brother, I said. He served in the United States Navy, attached to a Marine battalion as a medical corpsman. He had stories about that. I have two other brothers who were in the Navy that served on nuclear subs. One of them, when he left the Navy, decided he still wanted to be involved in the military, but he never wanted to go back on the sub, so he joined the Air Force Reserve. And I have a fourth brother who retired from the United States Marine Corps after 20 years. We had 8 boys in the family. That's 50% of our males in our family were in the military. I'm very proud of them all. We've had aunts, uncles, cousins that have all served as well. We fought in all American wars since the Revolution and Civil War. They fought on both sides. Eli S. Parker was a Seneca from New York and was an aide to General Ulysses S. Grant when General Lee surrendered at Approximate. Confederate Brigadier General Sandwat, a Cherokee, was the last to surrender as well. When World War I started, American Indians were not considered U.S. citizens, but that did not stop approximately 12,000 natives from volunteering to serve. They volunteered in the United States military. In addition, 4 American Indian soldiers served in the 142nd Infantry of the 36th Texas Oklahoma National Guard. I had to write that one down. And they received the highest honor from France for their participation in the war. The War Department officials have stated during World War II, if the entire population had enlisted at the same rate as American Indians, the selective service would not have been necessary. Would not have been necessary. According to the selective service in 1942, 99% of all eligible Indians, healthy males aged 21 to 44, had registered for the draft. The annual enlistment of American Indians jumped from 7,500 in the summer of 1942 to 22,000 at the beginning of 1945. Many of the enlisted personnel fought in all military fronts in Europe and Asia. By the end of the World War II, 24,521 reservation Indians and another 20,000 off Indian reservations served in the military effort. 10% at that time of the American Indian population. This combined figure of 44,500 represented 1/3 of all able-bodied Indian men from 18 to 50 years of age. And in some tribes, that percentage was as high as 70%. Based on an incomplete count, American Indians earned 71 Air Medals, 51 Silver Stars, 47 Bronze Stars, 34 Distinguished Flying Crosses, and 2 Congressional Medal of Honor from World War II. You know, the most famous exploits that everybody knows about World War II, and you've all heard it, you saw a movie, was the Navajos. I'm glad of my relatives, okay? They played an important part of the United States military. But did you know in the closing days of World War I, 14 Choctaw Indian men in the Army's 36th Division helped to win several key battles in France. With at least one Choctaw man in each field company headquarters, they handled military communications by field telephone, translated radio message into Choctaw language, and wrote field orders to be carried by a runner to various companies. The German army never deciphered the messages written in Choctaw. The Choctaws were recognized as the first to use their native language as an unbreakable code in World War I, and was again used in World War II. Again, you've heard about the Navajos, very proud of them. I'll tell you more about them in a minute. Also, after induction into the Army during World War II, 17 Comanches were selected to form a Comanche Signal Corps because of their unique language. The unique part was they were all in school, a government Indian school, and they had their hair cut. They were told they couldn't speak their language. They were punished if they did. They got enlisted and said, we're going to use you anyway. Those 17 individuals came from the same tribal community. They trained in all phases of communication. These members of the Army's 4th Signal Division used the Comanche language to relay important messages that could not be understood or decoded. Part of the reason is there was no written language to be done at that time. 13 Comanche code talkers in the 4th Division, including Corporal Charles Chaibidi, landed on Utah Beach in Normandy, France on June 6, 1944. Charles Chaibidi was the last of the Comanche code talkers and died in June of 2005 at the age of 83. Their role was not recognized by the federal government as a public thing until 1999. Think about it, 1945, 1999. Many Indians, regardless of their Navajo or any other code talkers, weren't allowed to speak of what they were able to do. It's a little like your cyber. You can't tell people what you're doing. Legitimately, this word means this, or this means or that, or how you did this. They were told they couldn't do it because they thought at one time they'd have to use them again. The Navajo code talkers actually were trained in the crucial role that the United States had the victory in the Pacific during World War II. By the end of the war, there were over 400 trained. They devised an alphabet to spell out words for which there had no code terms could be devised. They took many of the phrases from nature that had logical associations with military terms and places. The Navajo word for America, Nehima, meant our mother, and the clan names were used for military units. Eventually, again, more than 400 were used. My friend Charles Chaibidi, we brought him to San Antonio a lot of times for different events and activities over the years, and he used to laugh a lot about what they did. And he said, one of the terms we used, there was no term in the Comanche language for a tank. So, and these guys, 17 of them, they all trained together, 13 going over. So they came up, again, with their own term. They used the word turtle. Okay, turtle. Hard shell, move slow. So if somebody was listening on the other end, even if it was a Comanche, they said, why in the hell are they talking about turtles? They didn't have a term for a bomber, okay? But there was a term for a pregnant flying fish. So they used that. Again, it wasn't until the late 1990s that the public learned of the code talkers' exploits. In 2001, the Navajo veterans, again, many of them had passed away, received the Congressional Gold Medal for their service. In 2002, the U.S., and now that wasn't too long ago, thinking about time. In 2002, the Congress passed the Code Talker recognition to honor the Sioux, the Comanche, Choctaw Code Talkers, and similarly in 2008, further honored men of other tribes who used their language in wartime service to the United States. In 2013, less than 10 years ago, Native American code talkers from World War I and World War II, represented by 33 Native American tribes, received the Congressional Gold Medal from the President of the United States at the U.S. Capitol. During World War I, 14 American Indian women, didn't want to leave the women out, served in the Army Nurse Corps, with 2 of them serving overseas. One of the women that actually served, an Army nurse, referred to that adventure as an adventure of a lifetime, and she died in 1996 at the age of 106. Throughout World War II, 800 American women served in the United States military. That's what they counted. These brave women served in such units as the Army Corps, the Army Nurse Corps, and the WAVES. Anybody know what the WAVES are? Yeah, but do you know what it stands for? It says Women Accepted for Volunteer Emergency Service. Women accepted, and they volunteered. Major Loretta Jedias served as a surgical staff nurse in a medical evacuation flight service for the United States Air Force. She was the first Navajo woman to attain this rank while on active duty with the Air Force, and she represented at different places American Indian women in the military service at special events and frequently spoke before schools and club groups. In the Korean conflict, there are 3 American Indians awarded the Congressional Medal of Honor. Throughout the Vietnam era, American Indians enlisted in the military to the tune of more than 42,000. 90% of them were volunteers, with others serving through draft selection. After Vietnam, Natives continued to serve in high numbers, and since that time, Native service members have seen military action and combat in places like Grenada, Panama, Somalia, the Gulf War, Operation Enduring Freedom, Operation Iraqi Freedom, Operation Udon, and the list goes on. 1 out of every 4 Indian males in the military is a military veteran. 45 to 47 are tribal leaders and were military veterans as well. Here's some interesting facts on the lighter side. Jim Thorpe was a member of the Sioux Nation and won both the pentathlon, 5 events, and the decathlon, 10 events in the 1912 Olympics. You also had Billy Mills win, and he has a program today that is running Brave for Youth. It's a fitness program. He had been to San Antonio a couple of times, and we actually had a powwow one time. He happened to be in town doing the run, and we had a powwow at the same time. We're not always considered U.S. citizens. In 1934, the American Indian Citizenship Act was officially recognized as citizens in their own land. Here's another thing, though. We didn't always get a chance to vote. In fact, the last state to recognize American Indians to vote in that state was New Mexico, and they didn't do that until 1964. They think that a lot of American Indians are poor and destitute, which is false. There are a majority of Native Americans living in middle-class society today in all forms of occupations, whether they be doctors, lawyers, craftsmen, and the list goes on, electricians. Most American Indians that do live on reservations do have some poverty, but they're getting better as the time goes on, although a lot of them are able to hunt and fish all that they want and don't have to have the requirements that we set out for other people. Most people thought in the 1900s we all lived in teepees. Everybody think that? And that was because of what Hollywood thought. You know, every show you see on Westerns, there's teepees, Indian riding horses, you know, and the list goes on. Well, that's didn't happen. You know, across this country, there was Navajos lived in hogans. You know, they were solid structures. They're still living in some of those today. A friend of mine is also the vice president of my organization, United San Antonio Powwow. His family still lives in a hogan in the Grand Canyon. And he was born, we used to ask, where were you born, Calvin? He said, I was born in an Indian reservation at Black Rock. Everybody kind of looks at him a little bit funny, and he says it's near Chinle. You know, they have their own areas and what they do. We're not dependent on federal government for our assistance either. There are some that by treaties, they have some funds that are going to them. But, you know, by the vast majority today, there are not a whole lot of Indians that today in Texas, as an example, the 10th largest population of American Indians that live on a reservation. They have, some of them belong to Indian reservations in other parts of the country, from the Blackfeet to the Crow to the Seminole to, you know, anything, a Sioux, any of those that you can think of. But living in Texas, they don't get free health care unless they go back to their Indian reservations if they're enrolled and have to have a card. I had a second cousin, his name is Billy. Billy was enrolled, but was not enrolled, and he served in the military, as well as tribal police and Bureau of Indian Affairs. He had like 3 badges, for different services he did. He'd retire from one, go work for the other. So he said in the 60s, he went back home to San Juan in New Mexico, to the Pueblo there, and was trying to get his health services. And they said, where's your CDIB and where's your tribal enrollment card? And he went, at his age, he said, I've been coming here for years. Why is this all of a sudden a requirement? He says, because the federal government requires it. Wasn't really a problem for Billy at the time. Billy actually changed his name from Cata, C-A-T-A, to Carter to be more Americanized. But his father was the governor of the Pueblo that year. Not a problem getting enrolled. We don't get free education either. There are things like scholarships that are available to American Indians, but you have to apply just like everybody else. You have to keep up your grades. And in most cases, you have to be tribally enrolled. And right now, tribal enrollment for most Indian nations is 1/4. And because of the number of years and people marrying, you may be 1/8 of this, 1/8 of that, 1/3 of this, but in most cases, you have to be 1/4 of the tribe you're going to be recognized by. So although I'm Taos, Pueblo, and Navajo, 1/8 of each by the time it came down to me, I'm not 1/4 of either one, so you can't get enrolled. But that's all right, not a problem. We muddled through it. The information I provide today is just a scratch of what's happening there. There are now a lot of books that have been written. You have to be careful who you're doing them, seeing them. There are a lot of new movies that are coming out that have been done by Native people. There's a new one coming out that's going to talk about the Osages and the atrocities in Oklahoma with the oil, which I recommend to you guys. I've known some of the people that their families were part of that whole process, and I've danced with them for many, many years. But they're coming out, and it's good programming to look at. In fact, there was I can't think of her name, Lucy Lang or something, last night had a program, and it's available now on Amazon Prime and a couple of Hulu and a couple of the others. So if you miss that, that's a good thing that echoes into that particular thing. We teach our children and our grandchildren our heritage, and a lot of it's orally. So things like the powwow and gatherings we do, we're teaching them how to behave themselves. When the kids, since they were growing up in the circle, we call it a circle, since they were growing up, they never misbehaved because they had a room full of people that was always looking after them. They never got into trouble because somebody was there to stop them before they did it. They respected one another. They respected their elders. At times we've had feeds of where we serve the community. They've gone to a gathering like our powwows, and you'll see them get in line, and then you'll see them take that plate to an elder that's still sitting down. They've learned the respect. They've learned to take care of their dance clothes and not just throw things aside. We can't, the display I have over here, there's a lot of years that go into it and a lot of people that have helped put some of those clothes together. All of that stuff's been used. You have to put it away. You have to keep it clean. You have to keep it neat, and you just can't toss it. There's a blue dress over there in the middle with little cowrie shells. That's an exact replica of a dress that was made for my wife. She made that. Her and I did that. And when my granddaughter got old enough, we made a dress identical to hers. Smaller shells, but the coloring's the same, the wool's the same, the scarves on the back are the same. They were twins. But we showed them the respect. We showed them our culture. We wanted them to learn, and they have. You'll see them when we go to a gathering and things, teaching younger kids how to dance, to be respectful, and we're real proud about that. we place our trust in the kids, the next generation, to keep doing those things. Today, everyone has the opportunity to open a new era of understanding and cooperation and respect for all American Indian people that was completely different from 1900s. And this is all people, regardless of race, regardless of who your ethnicity is. We have that ability, all of you. We have a tradition in the military, we have a tradition in our families that we need to make sure it goes forward. Working together, we can tear down the walls of separation and mistrust to build a strong foundation for the future. We're not only an important part of the past, but we're an important part and a vital part of America today, and we'll play even more in our future. I want to thank you very much, and I enjoyed speaking with you today. Hopefully we didn't put everybody to sleep. Again, next time I'm going to talk at the back of the room and everybody's got to turn around. But I noticed the front row really did get filled. So thanks again for everybody, and Yate, and there's an Osage saying that goes, Wakanda, Wakanda, Jinke, Ekumbra, Wewe9 Datsi, Agatsi. And that translated says, Creator, Son of the Creator, I want to thank you, Father, for I am well. Thank you. Now I think we have a display. And I think you've got some food.